So welcome to today's lecture. Today we will be continuing our discussion on Markov chains, and in particular we will be doing a change of pace in the sense that we'll be discussing an algorithm today. I think enough of the convergence analysis and mathematics and all those things. So just to recap, what we have seen in the two lectures is that a Markov chain is basically a graph, or we can say that a graphical structure. So Markov chain is a graphical structure in which we know the one step transition probabilities. Okay, so it is a graphical structure in which we know the one step transition probabilities, and we have been interested in the analysis of a long random walk on the structure. So this is what we have been doing in the past two lectures. Yeah, I think. And as for that, we just said that the m step transition probability is the mth power of the one step transition probability. Okay. So one thing is that if you have not seen Markov chains before, and then it takes some practice to get used to what we are talking. So the book that I referred to in the last lecture, Essentials of Stochastic Processes by Duckett, I think. Yeah, you can look at the last lecture. It has several examples. Even the other standard stochastic books, I think Sheldon Ross also has a lot of examples. So you can pick up any probability textbook and work out lots of examples by yourself to get comfortable with Markov chains. If you have not seen it before, that is. If you have seen it before, then you will be comfortable with whatever we are discussing today. I mean, or whatever we have been discussing till now. Okay. So after this, the first two items, we basically defined the behavior of a Markov chain or the random walk. Then we also discussed challenges in constructing a Markovian model out of data. Okay. The homework 3, in fact, is sort of related to this point, but it is much more than that. Yeah. I mean, yeah, so when you try it, you should probably realize that it just goes on and on. The homework, you should you should spend sufficient amount of time thinking about that homework. It is a very good exercise. It is like a bench press in gym. We will not do actual bench press in real life, but when we do bench press in gym, it makes us strong. So similarly, it is good for developing the thought process on how to approach a problem or a research problem in particular. Okay. Then we talked about stationary distribution. We said that a distribution, if we work, which satisfies this equation. Okay. So if this is the probability vector denoting the probability of being in a particular state at time t, then this is the probability of being in that state at time t plus 1. So we call it stationary because the probabilities they stop moving. So for those probability vectors for which uh, the transition probability does not change, yeah, I think you get the idea. So that those are the stationary, that is called the stationary distribution. Related to this, we saw that if we start a random walk with some probability, let's say pi naught. Okay, so we start from a particular state, then we do a random walk. We keep walking, we keep walking. Then after a while, if certain conditions are satisfied, then after a while we will converge to a stationary distribution. And we also saw that the uh, connection between the spectral properties of the transition matrix P with the rate of convergence. Okay, so we saw it at an intuitive level with just an example, but there is theoretical development also in this area. We will not be discussing that in this course. Okay. Then in the last lecture, we also through examples we looked at classification of states. In we paid particular attention to the recurrent and transient states. There are several other classifications also, but we did not discuss them. I mean, it is there in the textbooks. You can just look it up. Then in the last lecture, we did some math as well. We did some math and some analysis here and there. So the idea was basically to give you exposure to some methods, exposure to some methods, or you can say just to give you a feel of what kind of methods and tricks and analysis is used when we are dealing with Markov chains or with random walks and all those things. Okay, so though that particular analysis may or may not be useful, but just to give you an idea of what kind of stuff goes on in this particular research area. One thing to note, as I'll write it down to emphasize, is that the analysis that we discussed, it is in no way sufficient, okay, or exhaustive. So you should realize that there is a lot that is out there, and actually it might even happen that one can even float a course discussing just Markov chains. Okay, so the area is so huge that if anyone wants to look up a good recent reference, then they can consult the book titled Markov chains and mixing times. And so it is by David Levine and Yuval Perez. The PDF is available online as well. So the book is devoted primarily to the study of mixing times. I'm just putting this terminology out there because if and when you come across this in um, uh, some other course or some papers or some references, you should at least loosely know what it means. So mixing time, what it loosely means is that the time needed to get close to the stationary distribution. Okay, so in a way, that is the convergence analysis in Markov chains. So if we start with with an initial probability vector pi naught, how fast will we converge to a stationary distribution? So that the whole book is in a way devoted to this analysis. Okay. So the get close parameter is also defined in a way they define something called as a total variation distance. Okay. So total variation distance will not go into the details, but because we have started talking about it, total variation distance, it basically is in some way, if we have to draw an analogy, just for the sake of it, if we have to draw an analogy, it is like spectral norm for probability distributions, but it is not exactly. What it means is that suppose if we have two distributions, mu and v, then the total variation between them, I think, is defined by the, if I am not wrong, okay. So this is the total, the definition of the total variation. Total variation. So mu and nu, they are probability distributions on the same probability space. The probability space is X. This is an, let's say, an event. Okay. So we calculate the maximum. So in a way, this says the maximum distance between the two probability distributions. We will find the probability of all the subset of events that can happen in this probability space, and then the maximum distance we will denote as total variation distance. Okay. But I do not want to discuss these things because we have already done a lot of such analysis, and we have been doing the same things for a long time. It has, the course has become sort of monotonous, so we'll not discuss that. I'll just, and we do not have sufficient time as well to discuss it. As I said, this whole textbook can uh, the book can be a textbook for a course. We do not have time, and yeah, the course has become, might become monotonous if you do the same things again and again. So we'll not go into that. But if someone is interested, they can read it from this textbook. And I personally believe that if we spend enough time on it, and everything can be followed, because yeah, I have not read it fully, but from what I read, it seems a decent textbook. Okay. So that is sort of, yeah, what we were discussing. I just want to check one thing. Okay. Just wanted to make sure if it's recording or not, because earlier it has happened that I have recorded the whole lecture and then I have to re-record it. Okay. But one, and there are a few, two results we will look at today. First is the convergence theorem. I mean, before going into Metropolis Hastings algorithm, that these results exist. Okay. So convergence theorem, it says that if P is the transition probability matrix, T is after T steps, this converges to pi. Okay. If the rho X of the T step transition probability, what this means is that the rho X of the T step transition probability matrix looks like the stationary distribution. Okay. If the Markov chain is irreducible and aperiodic. Okay. So when we say that this converges, it converges. I mean, this book also has the proof of the convergence theorem based on the total variation distance. Okay. So we will not look at the proof. We already saw with the help of an example in the first lecture that if we take large enough power, then this looks the same. So I think that is enough to just to convince you that this is indeed true. This was one of the things that I wanted to discuss, and the next thing is the expected time to return to a state X. Okay. So let us say if this is R of X, then R of X is given by 1 divided by pi of X, where this is the stationary distribution. Okay. So so stationary distribution corresponding to state X. Okay, so we should have written pi of X, but yeah, just for notational simplicity, we will not look at the formal proof. I think it involves law of large numbers or something, but just if we have to look at the intuition. So suppose pi of X is 0.5. Okay, so if pi of X is 0.5, then it means that once in every 2 steps, so on an average, once in every 2 steps, we will be in state X. Okay. Only then the probability will be 0.5. Okay. Half the time we have to, so what it means is that half the time we have to be on X. Okay. If you look at the frequency interpretation, that is why once in every 2 steps we have to be in X. Similarly, if we have pi of X is equal to, let's say, 1 by 3. Okay. So what it means is that once in 3 steps, we have to be in X. So eventually, if it is 1 by 3, then 1/3 of the times we are in X. So 1/3 of the time, if we are in X, then on an average, every 3 steps we have to reach. Similarly, you can just look at 1 by 5 as well. So once in every 5 steps, we have to be in X. So then, so 1/5 of the time we have to spend on state X. So that is how that is the intuition behind this expression. Okay, so that these are the two things which were left from the previous lecture. Now that this is done, we will do a change of pace. Change of pace, because we have done looked at a lot of convergences and all those things. Okay. Now we will discuss some algorithms, and that we will be doing this for the next few lectures as well. So after Markov chains, we will move into streaming and sketching algorithms. So now we will be discussing algorithms for a few lectures. So till now, in Markov chains, what we have done, our analysis had a certain pattern that we assumed that one step probability, or the one step, let's say, one step transition probability was given. Okay, and we were interested in long term behavior. All right, so when we find the stationary distributions and all those things, what we want to do is that if we have a code, and if it takes the transition probability matrix P inside, we are interested in questions related to pi, such that pi p is equal to pi, does pi exist, how fast does it converge, all those things we were doing this analysis. So next, or specifically, more specifically today, we are interested in the inverse analysis. This is not a technical term, inverse in the sense of in the English, in the language terms, what we use. So we assume that the long term behavior is given, and we are interested in what one step transition probabilities generate that long-term behavior. Okay. So we are interested in simulating that steady state probability distribution. So what we want to do is that we have a stationary probability distribution that is given to us. Now we want to find the one-step transition probability distribution such that this is satisfied. Okay. So today we will be discussing the Metropolis Hastings algorithm. To do the same. Okay. So this is our objective, what we want to do. So we have a long-term behavior which we want to simulate somehow. For some reason, we want to simulate the long-term behavior. And how can we do that? How can we create a Markov chain which has a given steady state distribution? Okay. So this is what we are interested in. But before going into the details of what Metropolis Hastings algorithm is and what it does, we look at a key concept of detailed balance. Okay. So we say that a Markov chain satisfies detailed balance if pi I Pij is equal to pi j Pji. Okay. So pi ij means that the probability of going from I to j. Okay. This is true for all I comma j in the state space. All right. So this is a very key concept. Uh, you would have seen similar definitions exist in other basic sciences when we were studying kinetics or whatnot. Okay. So in a way this says that suppose if we have so I'll give probably 2 3 interpretations, whatever sticks with you, you go with it. So pi I is given to us. Okay. So this is let's say this is state I, this is state j, and this the length of the stick, it denotes pi I and pi j. Okay. So what it means is that the fraction of the probability distribution that is going from I to j and the fraction of the probability distribution that is leaking from j to I, so they are the same. Okay, so the rate depends on what already exists. So this is one interpretation if it helps you. The other interpretation is that if suppose we have two cities, let's say I and j. Okay, then and then the number of cars, then what we mean by balanced is that now suppose we have two cities I and j. What we mean by balance is that the number of cars from I to j per unit time is equal to number of cars from j to I per unit time. Okay. So just spend some time on it. Try to understand the intuition behind what is happening. This is sort of an equilibrium condition where from pi I, if something is going to pi j, then few other things are coming from pi j to pi I as well. You can even think of it as exchange of money such that the total amount in I and j, it does not change. Okay. So this is sort of an equilibrium condition. because it is an equilibrium condition. If you get the intuition, then it is good. If so, what it means is that we have a lemma which says that if a vector pi satisfies the detailed balance, basically, is equal to pi ij, then pi is a stationary distribution. Of course, we should have that summation pi I equal to 1. Okay. So intuitively, if the movement across all the states, or if the rate of movement across all the states are conserved, then it is an equilibrium condition and nothing. Okay. Proofs are given in the textbook by Blumhoff-Croft Condon as well. So it is given in the. I mean, it is just a two-line proof. You can try working out. We basically have to prove pi p is equal to pi. Okay. So this is one thing, because objective here is that we have been given a long-term behavior and we want to generate one-step transition probabilities. So the only relation which we had between these two terms till now was pi p equal to pi. The detailed balance gives us another relation, which if the detailed balance is true for some pi, then pi is a stationary distribution. Okay. So the proof does not say it is an if and only if condition. Uh, if it is stationary, then it does not mean that the detailed balance has to be satisfied. The proof does not say that. What the proof says is that if the detailed balance is satisfied, then pi is a stationary distribution. Okay. So the Metropolis Hastings algorithm will give us a method of generating pi such that the detailed balance is satisfied. Okay. So that is what we will be looking at next. So we finally reach the Metropolis Hastings algorithm. So if there are n states, then we have pi 1, pi 2 till pi n. These are the known quantities. Okay. What we are interested in is generating a matrix. Let's say if this is I, this is, oh sorry, that is I, this is J, then n cross n matrix, where this entry will be Pij is the probability of going from I to J. Okay. So, and this should be a stochastic matrix. All right. And we should have pi p equal to pi. This is pi and this is the p matrix. Then we should have pi p equal to pi. If we think about it just from first principle, it is an enormous task. Given a vector and there are constraints, we have to find a matrix such that these constraints are satisfied. Okay, so it is no mean feat. I hope you appreciate what the algorithm is doing. From a vector, it is generating a matrix. Obviously, it is not, at least to me, it was not obvious on how this can be done. Maybe after when we know the algorithm, it sort of becomes obvious. But just we cannot. This is not something that if when we do not know the algorithm, we can do it in 5 minutes. Okay. So the algorithm is. I mean, I like the algorithm. Okay. So if we have to understand it further, okay, so we can also write it in this way. Suppose we have state I, we have state J. These are our n states, and we have pi I, we have pi J. These are like matchsticks of different lengths. Given pi I and pi J, we want to find Pij. Okay, Pij, Pji, whatever. All right. So this is want this is what we want to find. Now for the algorithm part, uh, we make, I mean there is some notation. So we assume that each discrete state has at most r neighbors. Okay, and when we say neighbors we mean one step. All right, so the pijs will be given by 1 by r min of 1 comma where we want to go divided by where we are, if I is not equal to j. Okay, so destination by source. So don't get confused if it is pi I by pi j or pi j by pi I. And here we will have j not equal to I. So whatever is left, we give it onto the self loop. Okay. So first thing is that uh, first first observation which we have is that if this is the ith row of the transition probability matrix, then somewhere we will have pii. Okay, so the probabilities are designed in such a way that the row sum is equal to 1. Okay, so the constraint of the stochastic matrix, this is satisfied. So the design itself is such that uh, we yeah, such that the row sum is equal to 1. So we basically put in this should be pij. Okay, yeah, or maybe notation wise we should let's say kl k not equal to l, because we don't want to confuse between this ij and this ij. Okay, so we take the sum of everything that was there when I not equal to j. Whatever is left, we give it as we give it as the self loop probability. Okay, so the algorithm by design ensures that whatever we get, that is stochastic matrix. Okay, then next thing which we want to test is the detailed balance. It is an easy thing to test. R, then we will have min. On the left hand side, we have Pij. Okay, so let me do it even more. Pi I, Pij is equal to pi j, Pji. So we have pi I by R min of 1 comma pi j by pi I is equal to pi j by R min of 1 comma pi I by pi j. Okay, R gets cancelled, we'll take pi I inside everything. So what we will be left with is min of pi I comma pi j is equal to min of pi j comma pi I. Okay, so the what we want to say with this calculation is that the Pij is defined as here. They satisfy the detailed balance equations. Okay, so because they satisfy the detailed balance equation, therefore pi I is here. It implies that the pi i's here are indeed the stationary distributions. Okay, if the transitions happen this way, these are the two things that ensure that the constraints are satisfied. The stationary distribution constraint is satisfied and the stochastic matrix constraint is also satisfied. So one thing which I would like you to think for yourself at home is that everything will work out even if we have max in place of min. Okay. So I want you to think what will go wrong if we have max, because the detail balance works when we have max as well. The row sum also works when, or does it work? You just think it out for yourself, and I mean just, so what happens if we have max in place of min? Any probability axioms, it will get violated, or the other things. Okay. So there are a few things which we should keep in mind when we are doing when we are using Metropolis Hastings algorithm. First is, maybe I'll use the black. The few things that we want to keep in mind while using Metropolis Hastings algorithm is, first is who will give us R. Okay. Because if we want to do something like we just have a probability vector, and we want to construct a Markov chain such that this is the transition probability. We do not have any graph structure given to us. Okay. We do not have any graph structure given to us. Then who will give us R? Do we assume something about R? Okay, so this is one question, one sticky point. But the thing here is that the only relevant point here is that we want to ensure that uh, this quantity is negative. Okay, so because we have so when we consider 1 minus k not equal to L, pkl, and here we have pkl is 1 by r min 1 comma pl divided by pi k. So one thing is that the value of r should be uh, such that this quantity is greater than equal to 0. Okay, and such an r always exists because we can keep bumping up the value of r to make the pkl smaller and smaller and smaller, and we can eventually find such an r. But what will be an upper bound? Upper bound in the sense that it is not an upper bound because, but a reasonable, I mean, just from based on what we are given to us, we would not want to increase the value of r beyond that. Okay, so this is one thing. Then the second observation is that if PII is greater than 0, if we choose the value of R such that PII is greater than 0, then it means that there is a self loop. Okay. If PII is greater than 0, then there is a self loop. Then a self loop implies aperiodicity. By default, a self loop implies aperiodicity. Aperiodicity is the GCD of lengths of directed edges, of directed cycles. Okay, so if 1 is there, then the GCD has to be 1. Okay, so this is so if the GCD is 1, then it is aperiodic. If there is a self loop, then aperiodicity comes to us for free. And then the second thing is the relation between R and strong connectedness. Okay, earlier we saw that it should be irreducible, periodic. When we say irreducible, we have recurrent state. Every state should be reachable, strongly connected graph. There are several ways of saying the same thing. But here we saw that R, each discrete state has at most R neighbors. Okay. So if we do not have a structure of the graph given to us, we can always pick R is equal to number of states. Okay, I answered this question. But anyway, we can always pick R to be equal to the number of states. And the number of states will be given by the dimension of the pi vector. Okay. So given the dimension of the pi vector, we will know the number of states or the number of nodes in the graph. And we can choose R to be number of nodes. If R is number of nodes, then not exactly number of nodes, actually n minus 1. But yeah, we can also pick n. So basically every node in the graph can be reached in one step. So the strong connectedness comes by default. But given any application, suppose we have some constraint that PII should be at least some value or that value, or there are some constraints that the degree should not be more than this, then we can work around and consider a smaller value of R as well. Okay. So how the smaller value of R will impact, we will see later. Next, we look at a random walk interpretation of the Metropolis Hastings algorithm. Okay. So suppose we did a long random walk and we somehow ended in state I. Okay. And we have, uh, so what it means is that, so what it means is that we have R many and we have R many neighbors. Okay. So we did a long random walk and we are now at state I. The state I has R many neighbors. Okay. So in the so if we have to stimulate using Metropolis Hastings algorithm, then in the first step we pick a neighbor uniformly at random. Okay. Because there are R neighbors, this is where we get the term 1 by R. So we pick a neighbor uniformly at random. Then we calculate pi I by pi j if pi j greater than pi I. What it means is that the probability of being in j is greater than the probability of being in I. Okay. Then min of 1 comma pi j by pi I is equal to 1. So what we will do is that first pick a vertex, first pick a neighbor uniformly at random. This will be probability 1 by R. If pi j is greater than pi I, then jump to j. Okay, because this term is equal to 1. Now if, or let's say greater than or equal to, if pi I is, if pi j is less than pi I, okay, then we will get min of 1 comma pi j by pi I is equal to pi j by pi. So when we get this, what we have to do is jump with probability pi j divided by pi. Okay. So in terms of a random walk interpretation, suppose if we are at state I, first we will pick a neighbor uniformly at random. Then the probability of picking that is 1 by R. Then because we are already given the vector pi, we will calculate the ratio pi j by pi I. If pi j by pi I is greater than 1, then we will jump to j. If pi j by pi I is less than 1, then we will jump with probability pi j divided by pi I. Okay. So this, and so there is a non-zero probability of being in state I. So if we are at state I, then we will basically uh, do the same exercise again for the next state. Okay. So if pi I is greater than pi j, then what it basically, so there is a small probability. I mean, what it intuitively means is that if pi I is greater than pi j, then we want to spend more time on state I compared to j. Because we want to spend more time in I compared to j, we do not always jump. We jump based on this ratio. And how can we simulate this? If we are writing a code, because we have jump with probability pi j to pi I, we will generate a random number between 0 to 1 if that random number is less than pi j by pi I. Suppose pi j by pi I is 0.7. Okay, then we will generate a random number between 0 and 1. If it is greater than, if it is less than 0.7, then jump, else don't. Okay, yeah, so this is what I mean, this is how we will implement this, but anyway. Okay, so this is the basically what we saw is the algorithm for Metropolis Hastings. Another interpretation for this algorithm, which we will discuss in some more detail in the next part of this lecture. This is just the first part of the lecture. Is that what we have actually done is the only source of randomness in this whole algorithm is the uniform. Okay, there is nothing else random happening in the algorithm because pi j by pi I and min, this is a deterministic calculation. So in effect, what we have done is that given a uniform distribution, we have generated a probability distribution, a PMF on the discrete states, a given PMF on the discrete states from uniform distribution. Okay, so this is another interpretation which will be more useful when we discuss generating continuous PDF in the next part of this lecture. So from a uniform distribution, we have generated a particular given PMF over the set of states. So this is what we have achieved in the Metropolis Hastings algorithm. So in the end of this part, we will just discuss a small example. I mean, this example is from the book itself. We assume that the structure is given to us, and these are the stationary probabilities that we are interested in. Okay, 1 by 8, and this is 1 by 8. Just by looking at the graph, we can say that R is equal to 3 because the maximum degree is 3 for A and C. Okay. Next, if you have to calculate probability of going from A to B, that will be 1 by 3 min of 1 comma destination is B, so destination stationary probability is 1 by 4, source is A, this is 1 by 2, and we will get 1 by 6. Okay, similarly probability of going from A to C will be 1 by 3 min of 1 comma destination is C has 1 by 8 and A has 1 by 2, so this will be 1 by 12. Now probability of going from A to D will also be 1 by 12 because the stationary probabilities are same, or you can calculate as well. Then the probability of self looping A to A will be 1 minus 1 by 6 minus 1 by 12 minus 1 by 12 is equal to 2 by 3. Okay, so this was the simple calculation of how we will generate the entries of the transition probability matrix. Another, I mean, just for completion, the probability of B to A will be 1 by 3 min of 1 comma 1 by 2 divided by 1 by 4. Okay, so this is greater than 1, so we'll take 1 and this will be 1 by 3. So the example is given in the book as well. So this finishes the first part of the Metropolis Hastings algorithm, in which we discussed all in all, what we have done is that given a stationary distribution, we have generated a transition probability matrix. The algorithm gives us a transition probability matrix to generate. So the transition, the one-step transition probability matrix that generates the long-term behavior given by the stationary probability distribution. So this was one interpretation. Another interpretation is that we created a Markov chain that simulates a given PMF, because these are discrete states. We constructed a Markov chain that simulates a given PMF from uniform distribution. Okay, so we have sort of simulated. If we do not know how to simulate that particular PMF, then we can always do it using uniform and then constructing a Markov chain. Okay, so this is the main takeaway from this part of the lecture. In the second part, we will look at how to do continuous distributions, and there we will call this 1 by R. It can be any proposal distribution. Okay, so suppose that we'll discuss it in the next part itself, but we will call this uniform as the proposal distribution.